to the Aristocrats Soccer Podcast, the elite soccer podcast in all of soccer podcasting and podcasting in general. I'm here with David Harris, with Jake Keegan, my co-host. Marion Cole, our other co-host, is on assignment. Jake, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Dave. Marion may join us mid-episode, so we'll have to see.
Yes, that we were very excited and hoping that she'll be able to, but currently on assignment as we speak.
We don't pay her, so that's kind of how it goes. But we're joined this week. By Daryl Fordyce, an old teammate of mine with FC Edmonton in 2016 and 2017. So, Daryl, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
Very excited on my part too, Daryl. I've gotten to follow you more through. I was following you through the NASL. Because I remember seeing you and Albert play with Edmonton, against the Cosmos. I was like, oh, cool. A couple of guys from Northern Ireland. And then when Jake went to Edmonton and stuff, it was really cool. So really excited to have you on, talk about football and your career and all the different twists and turns it's taken.
Yeah, I've been all over the place. Ireland, Northern Ireland, England, America, Canada. Still going, so who knows where I'll end up next. My wife says no more moving.
Exciting opportunities in some very interesting parts of the world, Daryl.
Yeah, Dave and I had decided that we could only do one Belfast brother at a time. So Albert has to have his own episode, and you have to have your own episode. So
Albert will not shut up. You never get to say him whenever he gets going.
Now that's what he said about you, though.
Yeah. And his dad jokes are not as good as mine.
I will say that Daryl has the best dad jokes of any player I've played with, and that's saying a lot.
That was before it was a dad as well.
Before we jump too far into it, though, I was telling Jake, I was reading in one of the articles with last season with Valor, like you were, I guess, doing Zoom calls or something, and something with you were busy with the kids while the Zoom calls were on, and the teammates were getting on you. What was that about, Daryl?
Yeah, well, obviously we get on the Zoom calls to do workouts, as every other team in the world started doing, and the daycare get close, so the child was running about, climbing over me whenever I'm trying to do push-ups, sit-ups. And then even one day my wife wasn't in, and I think halfway through it, he took a turd in the middle of the floor. So yeah, it was tough. But it was a good way to get a little rest between sets. But no, the boys were laughing, and it was a good bit of a crack. And again, he's turned into a fantastic kid. But again, if we were doing it now, you'd be headbutting me and throwing the computer across the room. Yeah, the boys had a good laugh. I didn't get my work in properly, but it was good fun.
Yeah, you saw that all the time with whether it's kids or pets. I had a cat with me for the quarantine workouts, and he'd be walking across the stream just causing havoc. But so after that quarantine, we all went through it, and we all went through those workouts. What was that island games like for you guys with Valor, just from a standpoint of you guys had a real bubble like the NBA had in the United States? So you guys were in the hotel for at least a month and a half. So what was that like, and how do you think this I guess we can call it a season? How'd that go for you guys?
Yeah, well, the league done fantastically well to get it up and running. And the hotel were brilliant, and every team in the hotel, a lot of respect between each other just to get it going, and went by the protocols. But again, it seemed like a miniature preseason tournament. We had 7 games. The teams that made the playoffs got a little bit more. But again, it was, yourself from playing it. Usually you have 6 games in preseason to get yourself fit. So the likes of me, an older type player, I need those minutes to really get up to speed. So, and then again, if a player get injured in the first game, or I actually get injured 2 weeks before it, so I was trying to get fit for the first game, and then it was back-to-back games. But again, a lot of a lot of players, a lot of teams were all in the same boat, and everyone made it happen. But the league done fantastic. The hotel were fantastic, and you weren't allowed to leave the hotel. But again, we had a little the hotel was right on the ocean, so we had a little a back porch type thing. You could go out and chill out and get a bit of fresh air, and then you get on the bus to go training or go to a game, and then you were back in the hotel, and that's what it was every day. But yeah, they actually overachieved in my opinion. The boys thought that it's going to be very, very poorly run, very difficult to get by, but no, it was very well run, and thankfully we got something out of this year.
What were your thoughts about, or what are your thoughts about what's going on now, given that backdrop with everything in Northern Ireland, with the Premiership and the testing or the lack thereof?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, health comes before everybody. If you're not healthy, you can't do anything. But again, it's good to get the games going because it's good for fans. This year has proven that the game is nothing without the fans. I've said that for years. Whenever if you play a training game, like an inter-squad game, it's not the same as whenever you're actually playing a competitive game in front of fans, whether it's your home fans or your away fans or both. So again, the priority is people's health, making sure people are okay and trying to stop the spread of this disease. And then the quicker we do that, the best we can get back, because we've had different leagues are doing different things, and in Northern Ireland they've got a little break at the minute, but then they'll go back if they open things up. Well, it get worse again. They've got the vaccine. Again, you have to wait on the science to see if it works, and doctors and all that stuff. And it just shows you as humans we're very vulnerable. And as humans we think, oh, we're untouchable. We're the most dominant force, dominant animal on the planet. And again, there's many people that just don't listen to the expert advice, and it messes everything up. But again, going back to football, you want to get out there, you want to get playing, but you have to respect the health of everybody else.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a delicate balance, like you're talking about, between trying not to get too many people infected, but also trying not to get too many people depressed with their being inside all day, not being able to have any entertainment. I think it's a fine balance. And I think it's tough because, yeah, there's doctors and stuff, but they are not very experienced on this particular thing. So it's a very tough thing for people to accept when they're told to stay in their homes for months on end. But I'm glad though, that the Premier League has kind of kept playing, and whether it be limited capacity or no capacity, depending on the region. But I think people need something. And it's important to have sport. I think even during like wars have been stopped because of a football game, or like there was like soldiers were playing each other during, like, was it World War I or something? So it's
Christmas Day.
Yeah, Christmas Day, World War I. So yeah. I think the sport has a huge place in society, no matter what society is going through at that time. So
the thing I was hearing about was the testing of the players was like the big concern with the players. Like the players getting tested, and now it seems like they're getting it sorted out. So
yeah, that's a thing. If you get tested and if you're positive, you can stay away from the rest of the team. Yeah. And it's always been the case if a player gets a flu, you don't come into training. That's always been the case. And unluckily this virus is a little bit more dangerous than the flu. Yeah. But again, whenever you got the flu, you've got the flu, I'll recover in a week. But with this, sometimes you don't know you've got it and you pass it on to someone else. Yeah. Or sometimes you do get it and you get really bad. But again, it's in terms of sport and soccer in general, it brings people together. And coming from Northern Ireland, we've got Catholics with Protestants, and there's been fights and friction over years, and the sport has always brought people together, brought the country together. And over my growing up there, sport has been the number one thing that's to bring the people together. And I went through that personally, growing up as a kid, joining the Belfast team, then into the Northern Ireland teams, and half the changing room are Catholic, half are Protestant, and you realise that, hey, unless we actually work as a team here, this is not going to work. So I wish everybody could play a sport at some, and it would be integrated, because it does bring people together. But again, as Jake said, this coronavirus thing is, no one's been in this situation before, and hopefully this is the last one. But the way the scientists are talking is saying this could happen again, no problem. But hopefully the next time, if it does happen, we're a lot more prepared for it.
Let's move now to a little bit happier topics. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the world, and we all know that, and we've all been in it for the last going on 10 months. So let's kind of backtrack. Let's go to the start. Let's go back to Belfast. Let's go back to Northern Ireland, and obviously you kind of started your first team career over in England in League One with your debut was with Bournemouth, right?
Yeah, my professional debut went on loan to Bournemouth. That was a tough game because it was straight in the men's league. But again, if you go right back to the start, I was playing. My dad always had me playing. I was playing for a team called St Andrews, the same team Albert Watson played for. I actually played on Albert's team, so I played 2 years up. And then,
how old is that guy? How old is that guy? Jesus, he's
about 50 now, isn't he? But again, as you know, whatever genes he has, whenever he gets an injury, he's back in 2 days. He breaks his leg and he's back a week later. But yeah, it's right back. A guy called Joe Kincaid. He owned the team. He was a Glasgow Rangers scout. What he done was he went over to Ajax and studied Ajax, how the youth development was, how they were producing players, and he brought that back to Northern Ireland and set up St Andrews. And I think he produced 86 professional players in the span of 15 years, 16 years, something like that. So we've had players like Stephen Davis, the Northern Ireland captain. Now he came through. Chris Brunt, you had Keith Gillespie back in the day, was at Newcastle, came through Man United. So there's so many to name. But again, Joe scouted me. I was playing for the Boys Brigade in Belfast, and I was only 7. He asked me to come up to play for the under-9s team, and that's when I started playing with Albert's team. And then went on. Went over to Glasgow Rangers since I was 10 years of age. I actually signed a contract when I was 11 that once I turned 16, I have the option to sign with the youth team, which was my option. And at that time, I had the Man United scout, Arsenal scout, Newcastle, like every club in England, you name it, they wanted me to go over. And, I'm a Manchester United fan and a Glasgow Rangers fan, and I was happy with Rangers. Flying over every 2 weeks, didn't want to leave, wanted to stay there forever. But then whenever I turned 16, whenever I turned 15, Rangers had all the Dutch people in. They had a head coach called Dick Advocat at the time. And the whole youth system was just filled with Dutch players. So I had some friends who were actually in the Rangers team. And I was flying over with Stephen Davis, Chris Brunt. Stephen Davis ended up going to Aston Villa. He was a few years older than me. Chris Brunt was a few years older. He ended up going to Middlesbrough. And then I ended up going over to Portsmouth and signing with Portsmouth. So that's where it started at the very beginning. And once I finished school at 16, and a month later, I was on a plane with one suitcase, moved to Portsmouth, and that was me straight in the pre-season.
Just real quick, not to interrupt you, but it's funny there because I was looking at an article where you mentioned some of this before, and it just seems like it's funny how Stephen Davis sort of like keeps finding his way back to Rangers.
Yeah, what a player! He's one of the best players we've ever produced in Northern Ireland. And Jake, he's a size of you. Like, he's not big, and to play centre midfield, if you're small, you have to be very good. And Stephen, I remember going over with him and watching some of his training sessions, and he was class. But the boys couldn't get the ball off him. Rangers were doing everything to sign him, and he ended up going to Aston Villa. But again, he was tremendous. He went down to Southampton, Aston Villa, Southampton. Ended up at Rangers, and he's 35, 36 now, same age as Albert. I think he might be a year older than Albert actually. But you know, you see some of the games this year, and he's been fantastic. He's playing the deep line midfielder role, getting on the ball, and you know, and even for Northern Ireland as well, he's broke the caps record, captain, just Mr. Reliable. And for every kid in Northern Ireland to have seen Stephen Davis do what he's done and how he's represented himself, the country, the clubs he's played for, you know, it's just remarkable.
What was that like for you as an American kid? It's a very different experience. When you turn 16, you're still in high school, unless you're I guess in comparison, you were a top player at that level in Northern Ireland, but you go over at 16, you're on your own. You said you packed one suitcase and you kind of have to figure out life for yourself. So how did that help you both as a player and then as a kid, just growing up and becoming a man?
Oh, you grow up so fast. I remember actually my first training session, I went over with a boy called Mark Wilson. He played for Republic of Ireland. He was at Bournemouth, Stoke City, a couple of other teams. But we lived together in the same room. As soon as we get in the room, we were unpacking our suitcase. Minibuses outside for training. We're like, it's 4:30 in the afternoon. You know, put on your training kit. Actually, the only training kit I had was my Glasgow Rangers training kit. And Mark was a Celtic fan, so he put on a Celtic shirt. Oh. And the two of us were in down on the beach, and it was old school pre-season, running on the sand up and down the beach, you know, like army type training. And that was it for 6 weeks, double sessions every day. Don't remember much apart from just running and sleeping. And honestly, like it just hit me straight up the face. Like if this is what it takes to be a professional footballer at this level, because the training was so demanding at 16 years of age, and I was never exposed to that in Northern Ireland. But again, you grow up, even simple things like setting up a bank account. You just lived off your mom and dad. All of a sudden, you start getting paid. You got to go to the bank yourself. You got to go buy food yourself, and you don't have your mom to do your washing, to do your ironing. We were in digs at the time, you know, so the guy and girl that we lived with, they would have done your washing and stuff, but sometimes they didn't get round to it. And you had to just basically work it out yourself. But you know, the first 6 months was very tough. You know, weekends after a game on a Saturday, you go back to your room. All the boys go home to their homes because they were all local. And there was me, Mark, and Asmir Begovic, the 3 foreign boys, and we would try and keep ourselves entertained. You know, you're 16, you can't go out to bars or anything. Again, but you grew up so fast, and again in America, like there's still like it's still, I still can't understand it whenever they say, oh, a 22-year-old, he's young, he's just breaking through. And like whenever I was 22-year-old, I'd already won the Irish League, I'd already won the cups. So, like I was in men's football, playing, winning stuff, getting kicked all over the place. Wasn't getting babied. I had my own apartment at that stage. And then whenever I actually came to Edmonton, and I started to realize, oh, these kids are coming out of college and they're 22. I'm like, no, these kids are men. They're 22. They should be up and running by this stage. You know, so it's completely different. And I guess that's why, you know, in Europe they produce a lot more quantity of professional players. Because at 16 I was like exposed to full-time training every single day. Whereas Jake, your experience would have been a little bit different being in college.
Yeah, like I've just touched on it quick. I would not have had full-time training until I was 22 or 23, like you're saying. Even in college, you're full-time for those 3 months in the fall season, but then for the rest, there's limitations with the NCAA, like how much you can train, how much gym work you can do. So it's completely different, and it's completely against development. It's NCAA rules, and you have to follow them, but it's just such a different experience over in Europe. And like you say,
whenever I was there, we still had to go to college. You know, so during that full-time training, I went to Portsmouth College. You know, so we were going to college also, but the priority was the football side. You know, and there's some days we had training, then the minibus would have took us to college, and we were there from say 12:30 to 5. or if we had in the morning time, we might have had college in the morning, and then the minibus would pick us up, and we were at the training ground for 12:30, and we were on the training pitch for 1. Then we had a 2-hour, 2.5-hour session. So it was very, very demanding. But again, it made me grow up so fast, and basically you become an adult and you're very independent by the age of 17, and you get treated like an adult and you have to act like an adult. And at 17, you'd say, oh, he's just a kid, a lot of development, but that's what they done. They pushed you to your limit, and that was with a Premier League club. And I know a lot has changed from now until then. The game's changed a little bit differently as well. But again, from 16 to 17, I was full-time training, gym sessions, college. Your full day was based around you as an individual to get better. And that's all it was down to.
You talk a little bit about then you made your debut with Bournemouth, and then had just talk a little bit about that time, and then ultimately you ended up going back to Northern Ireland and playing in the Premier League over there.
Yeah, well, I was in the Portsmouth first team squad at the time, training every day with them. And Harry Redknapp was just walking off a training pitch, and he comes over to me and says, "Look, I'm going to have to get you out on loan." I was like, okay. So I had a reserve game the next day, and back then you would put your boots into a big metal bin, and then the kit man would bring it to the stadium for you. I think we might have been away to Aston Villa reserves or something like that. So my boots were packed, and he actually, I got a phone call from the agent saying, "Look, you're going alone to Bournemouth." I'm like, "I've got a game tonight." He says, "No, you need to go to Bournemouth. You've got a game tomorrow for the first team." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He says, "Get there today. You need to train today. They've got an afternoon session. Get there today." Because Bournemouth's an hour away from Portsmouth. He says, "Get there today, train, and then you're playing tomorrow against Oldham at home." So my boots were packed already, and I'm like, "Where are they?" Kit man had left. He was away up to Birmingham with my boots. So I actually went in, and there was luckily I had an old pair sitting there, old pair of Preds, like last year's ones, and I said, "Oh, I'm just going to have to take these." So I actually went down to Bournemouth, played the game. I remember coming off the pitch with like 2 dead legs, or what do you call them here? Charlie horses.
Charlie horse, dead leg, yeah.
Honestly, like I was 19 at the time, and just proper men. And I was playing as a striker, an old school League One, like Albert, but twice the size of Albert. And they were just getting into the back of me every time. Every muscle was dead. And the next day I remember turning up for a cool down session. And the cool down session consisted of, there was like a small swimming pool. You had to do 64 lengths. And then you get out of the pool, you put your training kit on, and we were doing deadlifts and strength work. And I couldn't understand, like, this is a cool down session. And we had a game on the Tuesday. This was a Sunday.
Were you preparing for the triathlon, or?
Honestly, I was like our training was a little bit more different obviously in a Premier League team. In League One, it was like the army they were training, and the boys were just huge. Like every player down there was massive. But I played 3 games, I think it was, and then after the third one, I ended up getting injured. And I think it was down to obviously the training that we were doing. I wasn't, as a 19-year-old, I wasn't conditioned to that type of old school training, doing heavy lifting after a game. I'm not sure if teams still do that now. I doubt it, because ours was a little bit more structured at Portsmouth. But yeah, I ended up going back to Portsmouth, and then I was there for another year, and then ended up coming back to Northern Ireland. But again, when the following year, Harry Redknapp left, we brought in Alan Perrin, the French manager. And it was actually to play the last 2 games of the season against West Brom and Wigan in the Premier League. So the first team stayed up they were safe. They couldn't get relegated. And he called the reserve manager, brought me over and says, what position do you play? I'm like, attacking midfielder. He says, okay, tomorrow we play 4-4-1-1. You playing like as a number 10, basically. I'm like, oh, great. 30 minutes into the training session, one of the first team players follows through, catches me in the ankle, twists my ankle, out for 6 weeks. Calls over another boy, or striker. He plays the next 2 games. Elfsborg in Sweden end up signing him for 350 grand, 350,000 euro signing on fee after tax. Because a year later he went to Elfsborg and they drew Linfield in the Champions League qualifiers. So I actually met him in Belfast, and he actually showed me his bank account, and I'm like, "Are you joking me?" But again, that was the fine lines. Like for me, football, obviously you get paid money for it, but for me, it's about winning things. But then after that, I actually went to Stoke on loan, or not on loan, on trial, and Tony Pulis was the manager, and he says, "Look, if we get promoted, I'm not going to sign you, but if we don't get promoted, I will sign you." They were in the championship. He says, because if I get promoted, like the club gets £80 million, I get to buy players whoever I want. I'm like, fair enough. And then, no, my luck, Stoke end up winning the league, I think, and getting promoted in the last 4 weeks. But then pre-season, I went to Luton Town. They were in League One. Kevin Blackwell was the manager. He brings me, I fly over to Luton, train for a week, do excellent. Following week, go to Cyprus with him. On the way home in the plane, Kevin Blackwell's like, I want to give you a 2-year contract. I was like, awesome. Means I go into League One. I can develop, move my way up the leagues again. Because by then I was very fit, very strong. I was 20 at that stage. Put a lot of work in from the year before. And then the next day I turned up. We had a game against someone. I was actually playing centre midfield with Don Hutchison. Don't know if you remember Don Hutchison. Yep. And then after the game, Kevin Blackwell comes over and says, look, the club's getting into administration today. I'm leaving. I want to wish you all the best. And then I get back to the hotel. It's on Sky Sports News. Luton are administration. Had to pay my own flights back to Belfast. And the season was starting. And the season was starting in like 2 weeks' time or something. I'm like, I haven't got a club. So then Glentoran manager calls me, Alan McDonald, one of the best managers I've ever had. He was my under-21s assistant manager in Northern Ireland. He calls me and says, look, do you want to come to Glentoran? And I grew up supporting Linfield, and Linfield and Glentoran, they hate each other. I says, look, Alan, I can't sign for Glentoran. I grew up supporting Linfield and it doesn't really appeal to me. And I actually spoke to Linfield, and David Jeffrey says, look, I've got Glenn Ferguson and Peter Thompson, strikers. I've got Jimmy Mulgrew, Michael Gall, Paul McAreevy as centre midfielders. They're possibly the top 5 players in the league. He says, Glenn Ferguson will probably retire in a few years. McAreevy too, so I'll look at you in a couple of years. So Linfield wasn't an option. I spoke to Portadown, Ballymena, Newry, and then a couple of teams were throwing money, like they'll write a check to you here or give you cash, like a signing on fee. Yeah. And then I spoke to a player that played for Ballymena, and I asked him for advice. He played in the under-21s, and he just says, look, these are the options you have. If you want to go for money, sign for this team. If you want to try and win something, then you got to sign for Glentoran, because Glentoran are closest to Linfield. Yeah. So I went home to my dad and says, look, my dad's a big Linfield supporter, and we live in an area that's all Linfield supporters. All my friends are Linfield supporters. I said to my dad, look, I want to win trophies as a player, and Glentoran is obviously the best club to go to. Plus Alan McDonald, he was my under-21s assistant coach, and he was just an awesome person. And I ended up going over to Glentoran and signing for Glentoran. And as soon as I signed, the back of the newspaper was Blue Man signed for Glentoran. So there and then I was playing catch up at the club. But I never regretted it one bit. Absolutely loved my time at Glentoran.
Did you get a lot of pushback when you signed with them from people in the neighborhood, from family?
Yeah, but my friends absolutely tortured me. Linfield actually won the league that year, beat us by 3 points, I think. And I remember that night, 2 o'clock in the morning, there must have been about 25 people outside my apartment just singing Linfield songs.
Oh.
And my wife had work the next day, and we're like, well, what do we do here? But it was all good banter. Like the area that I come from, they all respect each other. And then again, the following year, we won the league. I won the league with Glentoran. And again, everyone was congratulating me, and they actually called round to see my medal and stuff. But yeah, it was awesome. And then again, I was there 4 years. We won the league cup, won the County Antrim Shield twice, got to the final of the Santanta Cup. That was the All Ireland, which we weren't actually supposed to go very far. We beat St. Pat's on the way. They had Keith Fahey playing centre midfield, who's what a tremendous player. And I remember, I remember we beat them 1-0 at the Oval. And I actually scored the goal. And after the game, their coach John McDonnell at the time, he says, "Look, I want to sign you." And then the game was on the Friday, and the Monday I get a phone call from our chairman. "Yeah, I want to give you a new contract." I'm like, "Yeah, because St. Pat's want me." And he was like, "They have tapped you up." I says, No, it was in the paper." And he was like, "What paper?" So because St. Pat's wanted me, I was able to negotiate a very good contract with Glentoran. Again, we got to the final. We had to actually go to Cork and play Cork in the final in Cork. They beat us 2-1. But again, it was tremendous. And then after 4 years, I was at Glentoran, and I was actually my last year there. The change coach, Scott Young, became the coach. I was thrown on the transfer list. The top 5 earners were on the transfer list. So getting that good contract actually came back and bit me in the backside because it threw me on the transfer list. But again, back in Europe, the contracts, the players are protected. It's if the clubs give you a contract, you're protected. They have to obey by what they gave you. Whereas in North America, they'll move the goalposts and there'll be sneaked writing in the contracts. Jake's laughing. He knows all about it. But yeah, that's what it was. And
real quick, Daryl, just before we go further now. So going from England to Northern Ireland, the training and the setup in England, and then compare that to where you went into Glentoran in Northern Ireland and how that affected you as a player.
Wow. So coming back from England, after training, you get your lunch, pick what you want. It's a buffet. You go home, you sleep. You wake up at night, play a bit of PlayStation, go for something to eat, and do that every day. So you're actually, the clubs have to really treat you like they need to really take care of you because they're investing a lot of money into you. Then you go back to Northern Ireland, and then most of it was part-time. So you train in the evening. Glentoran, we train Monday night, Tuesday night, Thursday night, played on a Saturday. That was mainly the league. But again, you went in and I'm like, oh, this is going to be easy. And then you realize that there's so many quality players in the league and a lot of dirty, tough players that don't give you a second on the ball. So again, you have to roll your sleeves up and get stuck in, first and foremost. And then your play, if you're quality enough, that'll come out in the second half. Because I remember the first training session with Glentoran, I just signed. I'm like, okay, this is going to be easy. And there was a player, Gary Hamilton. He's a Glenavon manager, and he's one of the best players I've ever played with. He was our number 10. I came in as like a number 8, and I couldn't get the ball off him in training. I was expecting just go in, take it off him. I couldn't get it off him, and he was nutmegging players. He was backheeling through balls. And then I realised that he was at Blackburn Rovers. I don't know if he still holds it, but he had the most goals in the reserve league in England with Blackburn Rovers, and he ended up coming back to Northern Ireland. And there was a lot of players like that throughout the league, which I wasn't aware of. Players that went over to England, to Scotland, and then they found their way back. So there was a lot of quality. and again, training in the evening. And then during the day, I found myself bored. And so I asked the players, what do you guys do during the day? And they were like, oh, we work. We've got a job. So I went to the head coach and says, look, I thought I have a professional contract. He was like, yeah, you do. But if you're bored during the day, go and get a job. So I ended up applying because we went to college in Portsmouth as well. I was a qualified fitness instructor and I had my fitness qualifications. So I applied for a job in, it was called JJB Sports in a gym. And they gave me the job. So I had to be up at 5:30 in the morning. And I wasn't even up after, I guess the earliest I was up was 7:30 in my life since then. And I had to get up at 5:30 and my alarm went at 5:30 the first day. And I just knocked it off and went back to sleep and didn't turn up for the job. So that was supposed to be my first job. And I'm like, there's no way I can get up that early. And then I go training at that night. So I went to another gym because I couldn't go to that gym, turn up and they're like, you're supposed to work here. Why didn't you come? So I joined another gym and I got to know this guy, still a good friend of mine, a guy called Eddie Marcos. And he was a manager it was a leisure center. And he actually said to me, why don't I can put you through your lifeguard qualification. And he says, there's a footballer shift. He actually says, I have a footballer shift here. You start at 7 in the morning and you finish at 12:15 in the afternoon. It means you can go to the gym after. You get your gym free, go home, have a bite to eat, have a nap, and then train at night, and then come back the next morning. I'm like, perfect. So Eddie put me through my lifeguard, and I became a lifeguard. And I was doing that I was a lifeguard for five years, I think. Working 7 in the morning to 12:15. Actually walked home. It wasn't far from my house. I actually walked home and then trained in the evening, and that was my life.
But Daryl, the thing that comes to my mind is like, so were you the same player in Northern Ireland that you were in England when you were and also, like, how are you supposed to get back to England or Scotland or whatever when you're in Northern Ireland and you're not, did it affect your form?
Yeah, it did. The first 6 months, it never, because I continue to be I continue to train like a professional. I'd done morning sessions myself, whether it was in the gym or out on the pitch. And then I was training in the evening. So I was doing double sessions a lot of times myself. But then gradually I found myself getting a little bit bored during the day, training on my own, no teams to train with. So then naturally I started to go down a little bit. And then that's whenever I got the job. I'm like, hey, I can make more money and I can do the gym after. But then my training, in terms of my intensity of training, slowly went down slightly. And what happened was, I'm like, okay, I'll just do the gym today because I'm a little bit tired after work. And then some days it was like, you know what, I'll give the gym a miss today. And then it sort of went down slightly. I was still a very good player, mind you, in the league. And I was doing very well for Glentoran. And I think the first year I scored 17 goals. But then the next year I scored 11. Then the year after I only scored 5. I was playing right midfield though when I scored 5 for most of the year. And then the 4th year at Glentoran, I was on the transfer list, and again they were trying to get rid of me. Linfield wanted me, but it would have meant I had to take like half my salary pay cut, and I had a mortgage at the time. I says, look, I can't just do it. I have to really prove myself in order to get a better contract, whether it's with Linfield or someone else, like the following year. And in pre-season, because I was on the transfer list, they were actually making me run extra. I was actually, if we were playing a game of possession, I was always in the defensive team. So I had to do a lot of this fitness stuff, 2-kilometer runs, and I was one of the fittest in the team. But what it actually done was, I guess the coaches, like I still speak to the coaches at this day, and I've still got a very good relationship with both of them, but they made me do a little bit more. Maybe after I had to do shuttle runs, a load of push-ups, sit-ups, But even after that, I would have went to the gym and put in the work. But what that actually done was sort of the punishment type running that they were making me do to try and say, you know what, I don't want to be here no more. Let's take a pay cut and go somewhere else, which is what the coaches wanted. What that actually done was, and because I put the effort in, it actually got me back to a standard that I was in England because of the training that they were putting me through. So till this day, like that was probably the best thing that happened to me, because I turned up for the first game of the season. I was on the transfer list. I wasn't playing any preseason games, but because they didn't play me any preseason game, maybe 10 minutes off the bench. But I was very, very fit. I was very sharp. My core was very strong, and I was going to the gym and getting stronger. And the first game of the season came, and our two strikers get injured. Gary Hamilton, he was one of the best players in the league, if not the best. He was injured. Who else? Matty Burrows. Matty Burrows ended up scoring one of the FIFA goals of the year. He was up for FIFA goal of the year one time. He was injured, and we had one other striker. And the coach says, no, I want to play him right wing. So I says to the assistant manager, look, I can play. We were playing 4-3-3. I says, look, I can play as a number 9. I played there for the under-19s in Northern Ireland, scored a few goals. He says, okay, I'll speak to the manager. The manager's like, no chance. So first game of the season came. There was no other options to play a striker. So I went to the manager the day before the game. He actually had us in the day before the game training. I says, look, put me up front. I'll do a job for you until the other two boys are back fit. So he threw me up front. First game of the season, we won 6-1 and I scored 5. and I came in after, and all the boys were like just shaking their head in disbelief. But my mindset at that time was, who have we got next? I'll take anyone on, because the training that they put me through without them knowing it made me as fit, as sharp as I possibly could have been at that stage. And then the next game I scored, the game after I scored, I think I had like nine goals in the first 4 games or something like that. And after that game, the chairman, he comes to me and says, look, I'm going to take you off the transfer list. But you have to take a pay cut. I'm like, you do realize I just scored 5 goals today? You know, and again, that just changed everything. But what that actually done was, it put me in the shot window, and I had teams from Scotland looking at me. I had teams from England looking at me, but I was never a number 9. I was a false 9, and teams didn't play with false 9s then. Teams wanted a number 9 who was fast, runs in behind, or who was big and strong. And I always see myself as an attacking midfielder, a 10 or an 8. And then halfway through that season, well, not halfway through, I think it was 5 games in, our 2 strikers came back, and our centre midfielder, we let one of them go, and our 2 other centre midfielders, one done his cruciate ligament and one done his medial ligament. So I went back in the midfield for the rest of the year. And again, I actually scored against, I think it was Rangers in pre-season. A week after that, we beat Rangers reserves 2-1. You know, so I actually had Rangers looking at me, but they were looking at me as a number 9, but I didn't fit the profile of what a number 9 they wanted, is what teams wanted back then. You know, like a DDA Drogba type number 9, someone like that, Lukaku type. That's what they all wanted back then. Jake would know, because Colin always wanted a striker like that. That's why I brought in Frank and Tommy. Yeah. You know, and they looked at me as that striker, but deep down I knew I'm not that striker. I'm a false 9 at the most, and if not, then I'm a 10 or an 8, because luckily I'm a good finisher. So anything around the box, like, I'll get close to scoring, and that's where I usually, like, my stats will say, oh, there's goals here, and they come on one and out number 9, but that's not what I was. But what that done was, at the end of the year, the goals were all on video, you know, and then at the end of that year, Linfield came in. Puerto Rico Islanders actually came in for me. Colin Clark was the head coach. Colin was actually in Northern Ireland at the time. And Colin just so happened to be good friends with my agent, who's from Portsmouth. So the two of them were in Belfast discussing a contract with me. And I spoke to Glentoran and I says, look, Puerto Rico want me. And they were like, no, we're not letting you go. I says, look, my contract's out at the end of the year. Linfield want me. Puerto Rico want me. You know, you'd rather have me go to Puerto Rico than Linfield. And he says, no, we want to keep you. I says, well, I'm not taking a pay cut to stay here because how I was treated. And I was going to go to Puerto Rico. And then after putting in a little bit of research, and my wife would have had to go with me, and seeing how the medical side was completely different. I'm like, you know, this is not going to work. Had I been single, no problem. But then at the end of that year, I ended up signing for Linfield. And that was a big controversy in the city.
You would have been a tomato if you went to Puerto Rico. I don't know if that would have been best for your complexion. Oh my goodness.
I wouldn't have got through 20 minutes.
Real quick before we jump into the Linfield, could you just I look back and I saw that one of your seasons with Glentoran, you played with Keith Gillespie.
Yeah.
Could you just touch on that a little bit if you don't mind?
Yeah, Keith came in. Obviously, he was towards the end of his career. What a fantastic person. Still speak to him till this day. You know, Keith obviously went through a lot of tough things in his life and gambling and stuff. He wrote a book about it. But again, you know, the knowledge that you got from Keith, it was tremendous. We would do, you know, phases of play or some team shape before games, and someone would make a pass and he would run over and grab the ball and say, look, don't make that pass, miss him out and play it straight to this guy. And you're the third man, you get it off this one. So he actually brought a little bit of a better dimension to our team at Glentoran. You know, and obviously he was at the end of his career, so we didn't get to play with the real Keith Gillespie, so to speak. But again, the experience, the knowledge that he brought in, what he knew in the game, playing at such a high level, just to give it to players like me as a younger player, to some of our other younger players, you know, it was to add to our game. It was incredible, you know, and Keith was fantastic on a night out as well. You know, have a bit of crack until it's home time, and then just go home. But yeah, Keith was brilliant.
So what was that after spending this time at Glentoran, and just probably the most prolific period of your career in terms of goals, right? I would imagine. And you had that time as a number 9. And for me, I think kind of when we played together, watching you in small side games, I think you could have fit in like the Harry Kane role, the way he does at Spurs now, just the way he kind of comes up underneath and then Son and whoever else make runs in behind. I think that would have been perfect for you. As playing as a striker, as a number 9, you could have gotten a lot of goals. But then, so you're with the Glentoran, you have a lot of success, and then now the move comes about to go to Linfield, and it's your hometown or your boyhood club, I guess. Your father's probably a lot happier. But what was that like? I mean, obviously you had a lot of success at Linfield. Well, you guys won the double. Was it your first year there? So what was that experience like at Linfield?
It was incredible. You know, boyhood club. I was a season ticket holder. I went to all the home games, a lot of away games since I was very, very young. In and out of Windsor Park my whole life. Getting up to watch Northern Ireland there, watching Linfield every week, and I always wanted to play for Linfield if I never made it across the water in England or Scotland. And David Jeffrey, again, going across the city, and it was controversial. I remember the day I went, signed it. The next day it was in the paper. I actually went up to Starbucks for a coffee, and a couple of Glentoran fans actually surrounded me, giving me a little bit of abuse. And that's the way Belfast was. But again, we went up there, and like the Linfield's squad depth was far superior than Glentoran's. So I had to fight for a place. Linfield had won the league. I think it was past the year before. And again, I remember pre-season, it was very, very difficult under David Jeffrey. And a lot of it was to do with mental strength. You know, he's the most successful manager in I think he's the most successful manager in Britain probably, and all of Ireland. The things that he's won, but the respect that David Jeffrey gave to his players, to his staff, not just the staff, but the cleaners that would come into the stadium. Everybody were treated with full respect, and you felt valued, you felt wanted, and it didn't matter if you were a under-9 player or an experienced first-team player. Everybody felt the love from, I guess, the chief of staff, so to speak, the boss, and that just went throughout the whole club. So it was completely different going from Glentoran to Linfield, and that's not to put anything down on Glentoran. It was just a little bit more, just there, I guess, like under Alex Ferguson would be under Manchester United. They were always there. They never fell away, and it was drilled into you from the first day you went in. And I remember me and Albert signed at the same time. First day we went in, there was 3 Linfield shirts to be signed. All the players signed it. Albert signed it between the crest and the Umbro sign, like right in the middle. And David Jeffrey comes in and he goes, "Who signed it there? Whose signature is that?" And someone goes, "That's Albert's." He absolutely goes through Albert, and Albert's sort of laughing, thinking it's a joke. And he went, "This is not a joke," and went right through Albert, like first day. And we were like, "What's going on here?" And he put the law down. He says, "I sign there, no one else signs there." And that was it. You knew you don't sign there. Nobody signs there. The manager signs there. But again, David Jeffrey had that ability that if you were playing a game, all he had to do was shout your name, and you knew what to do from that moment. So if you were playing for us, Jake, if you weren't at it or you were making a few mistakes, he would just shout, "Jake!" And right there and then, like he would do it to me and he'd do it to Albert, all the other players. Right there and then, you get flashbacks from the training the day before. All right, this is how we need to play this. This is what I need to do. And it was like a kick up the backside, and you went on and played well or played better than what you were doing. But again, we won the double that season, which was brilliant. I remember we won the league, and the boys were like, "Get the beers out." But we had a cup final a week later, and the manager was like, "Have a beer, but that's it. You go home, you rest up, you win the cup final next week, and then you can have a beer." And that's what it was. It was so intense. Like there was no days off in terms of mental. You had to be switched on at all times. You found yourself on the bench.
But was it at the level you were in when you were in England, though? Were you still training? Like, was there an opportunity to get back over there if you wanted to?
We were still training in the evening, so it wasn't really full time. I think this year Linfield are going to go full time, like the whole club is going to go full time. But again, you're training in the evening, and the thing with Northern Ireland is it's so difficult to get out of the league because just the style of play was back then. It was very difficult to shine week in, week out. It was just very difficult. If you had a great week, I remember Glentoran scored 5, and a week later we played Coleraine. I had one shot, and I managed to score. It was a volley off the bar and in from 25 yards. Apart from that, I didn't get a sniff the whole game. So if you were the danger man, there was 2 players on you, and one of them kicked you and the other one waited to kick you straight after. So it was very difficult to get out of the league. Now the league has improved dramatically in terms of tactics, possession, style of play, and that's all down to do with obviously the Irish FA making a lot better coaches. The coach education in the FA it's tremendous now. So there's a lot better coaches that's implemented it into the gameplay. And again, if you watch Albert's team, Larne, like they play some fantastic football. The modern football in Linfield would be the same. But yeah, it was like going to Linfield. It was a lot more intense. And again, I actually put myself a lot more pressure because that's where I wanted to be. And I wanted to win stuff. But the respect for every single player, we basically had 2 players for each position, and those 2 players were just as good as each other. And again, like the memories are awesome. but we won the double, and it was, for me, it was a boyhood dream because I celebrated Linfield winning the league and cups as a kid in the stands, running onto the pitch, running past the stewards to get on the pitch to see the players. It was fantastic, and like now sitting here as a 34-year-old, I want to win something before I retire because the feeling that you get is unbelievable. It's nothing like it in football. You can get a nice contract, or you can score a goal, you can score a last-minute goal, but nothing feels like after a game of winning a trophy and you're in the changing room looking around the boys and you're like, wow, we actually did it.
Then you're off to Edmonton, and Edmonton came in, and can you talk to us a little bit about that? And obviously they came in for both you and Albert, so you guys are intertwined yet again.
Yeah. So it was actually, we won the double with Linfield. Me and my wife went off to Gran Canaria. We got married 1st of June. We were landing in Gran Canaria the day after the wedding, and my wife says, "Can you play football somewhere else?" I'm like, "What do you mean? You're not like Linfield? I've just won the double. This is like, I'm on a high. This is unbelievable. I want to win double again a year later. I want to get better and better." And she's like, "No, I mean at the other side of the world." I says, "Okay, I'll look into it." So I sort of started to do a little bit of research because Puerto Rico again, that came up, and I started looking into it. I remember looking at San Antonio, looking at actually looking at the NASL because it was just new, and it was about it was October time, I'd guess, and I was on the bench for most of the time, but I was actually, the team, we weren't doing too well that year. We were still good, but we were sort of, I guess, a little bit arrogant. We just thinking, "No, this is easy," because the competition didn't seem as strong as it did the year before. But Cliftonville were much, much better, which caught us off guard a little bit. So I was actually on the bench for a lot of that year, and I wasn't happy being on the bench. And I remember coming off the bench, scoring an equaliser. We drew 1-1. The next game, come off the bench, scored again. Coming off the bench, playing left midfield. And I was just like coming inside and shooting with my right foot, or bringing it onto my left and shooting. And I think it was 3 games in a row I scored coming off the bench. And I went to the manager and says, "Look, any chance of me starting here? We're not doing too well. We're drawing these games. I've actually scored in the last 3 games." And he was like, "Yeah, I'm trying to get you in." And I just, at that point, I don't know what it was, but I wasn't happy with how things were going. And then we were actually 2-0 down we're 2-0 down away to Glenavon. And Albert scored to make it 2-1, and he brought me on, and I scored 2, and we won 3-2. So I went in after the game, and I spoke to the manager. I says, "Look, surely I'm starting the next game. I have to start." And he was like, "Yeah, you'll be starting the next game." And the next game came, and I remember in the changing room, we didn't know the team until the day before, or until that day. And he would just flip up the flip chart, and we'd always played a 4-4-2. And if your name was on it, you were starting. That's when you knew you started. Like we would have maybe a squad game on the Thursday night, but that was never the team that he was intending to play. And they flipped up the flip chart, and I just remember looking at it, and I was on the bench, and I seen the boys look, like all the boys were just looking at me as if to say, "What's going on here? What have you done? Like, have you done something wrong?" And at that point, like I was very low because my hard work wasn't paying off, and I was actually training hard. And then that's whenever I went, "You know what? How do I get a move abroad? My wife wants to move. Now's the time." And that's whenever I looked into it. I found out that to get into it could have been Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada. I wasn't even looking at Canada. I was looking into America. And I played with Johnny Steele back in the day. Obviously, Johnny played with Miami and a couple of other teams. And I contacted him and says, "Look, how do I go about it?" He says, "First and foremost, you need a highlight reel. You need to make a highlight video because that's what they do here." Back in Ireland, there's no highlight videos. You don't.
Yeah.
If you make a highlight video, you're seen as, oh, he loves himself.
Yeah.
He's a big time Charlie.
Yeah.
That's how people looked at it.
Yeah.
And luckily, the goals that I scored from the previous year and the year at Glentoran, and at Glentoran I scored some fantastic goals that year. They were all on the BBC website, and I was managed to pull them down and make a highlight video. And that's whenever I was like, I had a phone call with Asmir Begovic. I used to live with him in Portsmouth, and it says, "Look, Asmir, are you still, is Will still your agent?" Because he was a guy called Will, worked for IMG. He was both our agents, or he was our agent for both of us. I says, "Can Will? I'm looking to get a move across to America," and he grew up in Edmonton. And he says, "Look, I'll speak to Edmonton. They've got a team. Send me your video." And I sent it to Edmonton. The guy watched it, phoned me. Guy called Joe Petroni. He phones me, says, "Yes, you look awesome. They just hired Colin Miller. Colin's from Scotland." It gave Colin a chance, I guess, an excuse for Edmonton to pay for a scouting trip over to Northern Ireland. He actually went and seen family in Scotland. And Colin flies over, watches me for Linfield. And it just so happened that I was actually injured for 2 weeks and I was coming back from injury. And I was expecting to play. Me and Albert were actually injured at the same time. I was actually expecting to play for the first team that week. And it was away to Ballinamallard, which is 2.5 hour drive away, which is long back there. It's like, oh no, it's a nightmare, this trip. But if you live in America, it's like, oh, it's down the road, it's easy. But again, I spoke to Colin. I says, "Look, Colin, I'm just coming back from injury. I'm actually playing for the reserves this week. But the good thing is it's in Belfast and you don't have to drive to Ballinamallard," because he would have flown from Glasgow to Belfast and he would have had to drive 2.5, 3 hours to a game. And it was freezing. This was December time, I think. It was freezing. So he came and watched a reserve game. And I says, "The reserve manager, what formation are you playing?" And the reserve manager, Linfield, funny, one of the best guys ever. He says, "We're going to play a 4-3-3, but a different style." I'm like, "Right." He says, "We're going to play 3 in the middle, but we're going to have 2 strikers and a right winger. We're not going to play with anyone on the left." So it was a lopsided 4-3-3. And we were like, "All right, Dennis." He says, "Where do you want to play?" I says, "Put me in the middle of the 3. I'll play in the middle of the pitch." So I played there for the reserves. Luckily, I had the game was easy to me because it was a lot of younger players. And Colin came and watched it, and luckily I played well. And just to verify that I am what the video was. And I met Colin in the hotel, and he just said, "Obviously, I want to sign you, but you're in your contract. You'll need to get out of your contract. Then you'll have to fly to Edmonton on a trial basis just to prove it to the technical director so we can sign you." He was like, "Okay." He says, "Is there any good centre backs?" And I knew Albert always wanted to move to America. So Albert was just back from injury, but he was with the first team that day. But he was on the bench for the first team. And that's the way it was at Linfield. If you lost your place through injury or suspension, and the guy in your position played well, you didn't get back in until he played poorly or he get injured. That was, it didn't matter who you were. And that's just how it was at Linfield. Because again, it was, say me and Jake, there was me, say we played a 4-4-2 and me and Jake were the 2 strikers and you had Tommy and Frank, so to speak. Everybody were just as good as each other. And whoever was playing well at the time, that was you were selected. And that's how it was. It was based on merit. And I guess that's why Linfield were so successful, because you knew if you drop your standards slightly, you were on the bench. But again, I says, look, there's a defender. He was our player of the year last year. I know he wants to go to America. I doubt he even knows where Edmonton is. I says, I only know where Edmonton is because Asmir grew up there and he told me about it. So
tell him it's northern US.
Yeah. So the first team won 3-1, I think. Easy game. I said to Colin, look, fly back on Tuesday. We play Crusaders at home. So he flies to Glasgow, flies back to Belfast. But on the Monday night, we have training. And one of my best friends in the team at the time, I grew up with, he actually just retired the other day, a guy called David Armstrong. He was playing centre back. And he knew, I was speaking to him, and he was like, it's just, as soon as I make a bad pass, he's going to drop me and put Albert in the team, and then I'm sitting on the bench for the rest of the year, because Albert was the best centre back in the league the previous year. And I says, look, Davey, there's a scout over here, or there's a coach over watching Albert tomorrow night, but he needs to play. If he doesn't play, he's not going to see him. If he plays and plays well, and he gets a move in January, you'll be playing centre back for the rest of the year. There's no one going to take it. So I actually says, look, your hamstring, make sure your hamstring's not right. So to be fair, he had a tight hamstring. So Davey goes into the manager, says, look, I can't play. My hamstrings feels like it's going to go. So we turn up on the Tuesday. I haven't told Albert anything. The team sheet comes out. Albert's not expecting to start. Comes out. He's on the team. Davey's injured. Albert, you're playing. He's like, all right. So Albert starts taking his pre-workout because he's getting ready for the game. And I go over to Albert before the warm-up. Actually, after the warm-up, I says, by the way, Albert, there's a coach here watching you tonight. Just play well. I'll speak to you after the game. And you might get a move to America or Canada. He's like, what do you mean? I says, just play well. And we're playing Crusaders. Crusaders a striker, 6'4". Chicken, that's his nickname. Beats everyone in the air, and Crusaders just go direct. They're like Burnley. Straight up, he flicks it on, heads it down for people. Albert never lost a header against him the whole game. Now, the boy Chicken ends up scoring, but he scored the ball fell down off the other centre back, and he volleyed it in. They beat us 1-0. But Colin phones me and says, come to the hotel, I want to speak to you. He says, yeah, I need to sign him. Get the 2 years out of your contract. And again, it wasn't more for changing clubs, it was more for changing life. I wanted to start a new life in a different country with my wife and start a family somewhere else. Albert wanted to see him. And that's where it came about. We went in and spoke to Linfield and says, look, we want to move. Albert was a coach he coached school kids and stuff for the Irish FA, and it went through. And that's how it came about. But it ended up that Cliftonville ended up winning the league that year, and they won it the year later. They were actually fantastic at that time, some quality players, and then we ended up in Edmonton. Albert didn't have a clue where Edmonton was whenever I told him. I says, look,
Linfield just released you from your contract?
Yeah, we had to speak to the board and get it through and say, look, there's an opportunity. Nothing's concrete, but obviously soccer's our main job. But if it doesn't come through, I'm a qualified lifeguard, and Albert has his UFAB license. He'll get a coaching job. But we still had to fly to Edmonton and do a couple of training sessions for the technical director to pass it, which he did do. But yeah, it was that's how it came about, and we were there for 2013. We were for like 5 years. Yeah, and that's what it was. But again, I had to leave my job. Albert had to leave his job, and then we had to get released from Linfield, and then coming over, and actually it's a big. I bought an apartment, so I had to get that rented out. I had to sell 2 cars. It was life changing, and didn't look back since. And probably the best thing I've ever done. But it was scary. It was scary, but it was awesome.
On the soccer side, I remember as that's the year the Cosmos were coming about. So you guys were there just before that. But then when the Cosmos came about later on that year in 2013, going to the Cosmos games, and then when Edmonton came in, besides just seeing like, oh wow, there's 2 guys from Northern Ireland, kind of cool. Like you guys were definitely, I think, not having knowing the team extensively, you were both pretty impactful players for the Edmonton team, and this is a Cosmos team with, on the Cosmos side, they had brought in Carlos Mendez from MLS to be the captain, the focal point, but then they also had Marcos Senna in the midfield, so a lot of hype.
Raul
came later on, but in 2015
and during 2013.
Yeah, seeing Edmonton come to town, and seeing both Albert and Daryl, there were other good quality players around them, but they were two very key players for that Edmonton side.
Yeah, I remember going to New York to play the Cosmos and first time against Senna, and Colin Miller says to me, "Look, we're going to play a 4-4-1-1 again. You're playing as a 10, but your job is just take Marcos Senna out of the game. If you manage to get a goal, maybe we'll sneak a win, but just everything goes through Senna." He says he's 35, he can't run, he can't move, he's not quick. And I'm like, right, no problem. Came out at half time. Colin says to me, "Daryl, are you all right?" I says, "Colin, I can't get near him. He's too good." And he says, "What do you mean he's too good?" And I actually had to show Colin on the tactics board and saying, "Look, if I do this, Mendes does this, or the other big boy, who's the other one? Was it Diaz or someone like that? Or can't remember.
Which guy?
He used to play beside Mendes.
Oh, Reversio.
Yeah. I says, "Look,
Brazilian.
if I do this, he does this, and if I do that, he does that." I says, what am I meant to do? And we didn't actually. There was no solution to it apart from drop off. So it was basically drop off and get compact, try and basically defend a little bit deeper because I was trying to stop him higher up. But I remember the second half, and all I done the second half, I went out onto that pitch.
Which
we couldn't get the ball.
Also, by the way, which was just as a side note, which was not a good pitch. It was a
terrible
very
pitch.
That was actually
bobbly.
That was the
Hofstra.
lacrosse field for Hofstra.
Yeah.
You weren't even playing at the actual soccer stadium because it's bigger capacity, and the pitch quality was just. It was an interesting kind of like the soccer team for the college didn't even play there, so pretty funny.
Yeah, but again, Senna had the best touch, and again the second half I just went out, and that was the game. In that second half, that actually took my game personally to another level, because what I learned from Senna, I implemented that into my own game, and Jake would have seen it whenever Jake came. And in 2016, whenever I used to drop a little bit deeper to get the ball off Albert, to get the ball off Pap, and me and Jake would have been on the same wavelength, I'd say, look, whenever I get turned here, make that run between the right back and the right centre back, because a lot of times Jake would have been on the left, and I would have found Jake with a 60-yard ball, or a couple of assists, and Jake would have found me in the opposite. I have videos of me setting him up, and then a week later he sets me up from a diagonal. So it was that sort of connection that I got, and the awareness of what Senna done. And I remember early in the game, I waited to the centre back play the ball in the Senna, and I went right in tight because I wanted to kick him early doors to let him know you're in for a game, being just the Irish type in me. And the defender passed the ball in a little bit too hard, and he spoke in Portuguese, I guess, or Spanish, whatever it was, to him. I think it might have been Spanish he actually spoke to him. And whatever he said to him, the next time the ball came in, the defender passed it in a little bit slower. But Senna was on the half turn, and he was looking at me. And he knew where the ball was. So I went in tight, and he just played a one-time ball around the corner. And then the next time, the defender passed it in hard to him, and I came tight, and he played a 1-2 back, and then the centre back broke a line, took a touch past me. So then after the game, I actually spoke to Mendes. I says, "Mendes, what did he say early on to the other centre back?" And he was explaining. He was saying, "Look, depending on my distance to him, pass it in softer so he can see me." But what Senna was doing was he was looking to see, the distance that I was going at, he was able to gauge the distance that I was at, and then look beyond me to where his players were, or where his players were going to be. And he would play a one-time ball. And it reminded me of watching Paul Scholes, like as a kid for Man United, and how he done it. And it was that second half, I didn't care about what the score was going to be or my defensive role. I was watching Senna the whole half because I knew if I could take this on. And honestly, I went back, I watched his videos because I remember he played for Villarreal and Riquelme played, and they almost got to the Champions League final. Riquelme missed a penalty against Arsenal in the semi-final because they actually had Manchester United in their group stage. And I was a big Man United fan, and they beat Man United in Villarreal 2-0. And I knew they were a very good team. The reason I know this is because they were 33-1 to win the Champions League. And I might have been only 16 or 17 at the time. And I put like £10 on them to win it. So I was cheering on Villarreal to win the Champions League that year. And that's how I knew, like, came across and knew about Senna. But again, I went back to training and I started watching some of his games, watching Michael Carrick, Paul Scholes, these guys that are not quick, but they're a step ahead of everybody. So I started to study that personally. And by doing that, I actually learned more doing that than any other coach has taught me in my whole career. And that second half, I was able to put it in. And I think it was a big help to our Edmonton team as well, because we started to dominate possession. Our midfield three was me, Nick Ledgerwood, and Shamit Sham at the time. And like, we didn't have star players to what all the other teams did. But we had, I realized that we needed to get this connection with each other. And it's not a connection, a chemistry type in terms of, if you ever play FIFA, you see them doing all the chemistry and all these connections. That's the way I started to see it then, because I realized that Senna, everything was connected in that Cosmos team. And that's why Cosmos ended up winning. It wasn't just to do with the star players that they had. The star players had that connection. And as whenever Jake came in, he realized, well, not realized, but he would have seen it happening. Because the first 2 years at Edmonton, we were basically a punch bag. We couldn't get the ball off anybody. We couldn't keep the ball, especially away games. We'd never win an away game. Very lucky to win an away game. At home, we might have won the odd game. There were 7 teams in the league. We finished 6th. Then there was 10 teams. I think we finished 8th. And then there was 12 teams, 2016. We ended up finishing 3rd both years. And I remember sitting down with Colin Miller at the end of the season, and Colin seen the game a lot different. He liked the 4-4-2 hard work style, a lot of running, but you go down and play teams in Florida in the heat. You go down to Texas and play San Antonio, and it was very difficult to play that British style. So I actually sat down with Colin and says, look, this is what we need to do instead. We need to work a lot more on possession. We need to work a lot more on angles. We need to work a lot more on body shape, and the quality of pass and the way to pass, and passing to the correct foot. And me, that's whenever I started to really look into that type of style, because you watch a Premier League game and it just happens. As a fan, you see it just happening, but the actual detail, the message on the pass, it's tremendous. The body shape, and that's why the best players never get caught in possession of the ball. It's not, a lot of the time, it's nothing to do with shape, tactics. The coach can only do so much, but the coach can't make the player be on a half turn in a certain position in a certain part of the pitch. But the guy passing the ball, so the chemistry that we built that year, and then I remember the Cosmos coming up to Edmonton, and I remember before the game, they weren't as relaxed as they used to be. And I spoke to one of their players. I think it was Mendes again. I said, you guys don't seem as confident this time. He's like, no, we respect you guys now. And I think we beat them at home. We beat them at home a few times.
Yeah, you scored the winner in the last minute.
Yeah, scored a winner last minute. But again, we beat them. We beat them before, and I think we actually went away and beat them, which was very, like we the year before we were like, no, there's no way we're going to beat the Cosmos. But we were there. We were challenging, and it was all down to the team chemistry that we had, the respect, the work rate we had for each other, and the connection. And I knew that if I got the ball in a certain part of the pitch and Jake was playing, I knew Jake's going to make this run. If Saney was playing, I knew Saney was going to make this run. Obviously, we brought in Adam Ackersley at left back, and Adam came through Manchester United and he's seen the game very similar. And Albert wouldn't have been the ball type centre back, so to speak. I remember having a wine with Albert in the house. I says, look, we're going to have to change our game slightly, because for the team to be successful, this is how we need to be a little bit better. And me and Albert would sit and go over certain games, and I would say, like, we'd be sitting watching Man City against Wolves or someone. I'd say, now look at this, look at Company, what he's doing, how quickly he got into this position to make that angle. You know, people take it for granted. And again, that's whenever, then again, the following year, we lost a few players. I left, Adam left, Matt Van Oekel, obviously, the success that year, Matt made some fantastic saves, you know, which kept us in games. But we had a strong defence, we had a strong goalkeeper, and we always had that at Edmonton. But what we didn't have was finding how to win games. And we knew we had Jake, who could see Jake in training. Jake could score more goals than me, and I wouldn't be happy about it. And I'd be like, I'd come in tomorrow and I'd be like, no, I have to score more than Jake tomorrow. And it was always me and Jake, maybe Fisky, you know, in terms of the best finishers in the team. Tommy was more of a target man. But again, we had players that could get that goal. The Jakes, the Fiskies, the Tommy, Dustin, me, Sammy. That would have been the boys that would have went and got that goal, because the defence have done their job as they usually do. And I think that was a difference, just the chemistry and the belief. You know, I remember the Cosmos game at home, first half, I played as a striker. They were 1-0 up. Couldn't get the ball off them. Came in at half time, I went in the midfield. Tommy went up front. We just kept going, get into the game. Nick Laserwood scores with 10 minutes to go. But right before my goal, like a minute before, Sean Nicklaw clears the ball off the line from Lucky Kasana. He beats Matt, and Sean just runs back, clears it off the line. They get a throw in, ball comes in, that falls to actually Gustavo. Gustavo plays the ball to Dustin. Dustin plays a wonderful ball with the outside of his left foot for Tommy. And I remember that whenever the ball was cleared off that line, I was knackered. I was defending the throw in. And then whenever the ball was played to Tommy, I just took off up the pitch. And I guess that was the belief. Like, for me, that game summed up our whole team that season, because we knew if we were still in the game, we'll get you in the last 10 minutes. And we done it to many teams.
Were you able to really be the best that you could be, or, you know, were you playing at the level that you were playing at when you were in England, and then when you first came back to Glentoran and you were scoring all those goals, were you back at that level with all the training and everything, that the resources maybe you had at Edmonton versus the years in Glentoran and Linfield?
Yeah, well, over the years, it's always, anytime that I've put in hard work, like, I mean, very, very hard work, and got myself as fit, got my body fat down. And again, I'll put a lot of it down to Jake as well, and he doesn't know this. We were in the airport once, and I'm like, it was just me and Jake. I think it might have been, I'm not sure if Tyson, but the flight gets split up, and I ended up with Jake. And I know Jake eats very healthily, and I was looking for, I don't know, like a chicken burger or something like that. And Jake goes over to the salad counter and gets this big salad bowl. I don't know if you remember this, Jake.
Was this was it one of the Scotland trips? Was it a preseason trip? Do you remember?
I can't even remember where it was, but I just remember in the airport, and I remember looking. Jake's the fittest in the team. Him and Shamit. Like, it was, I don't know if it was during preseason or after preseason.
Yeah, it was that first beep test.
Yeah, and Jake got this big salad bowl. It was full of veg, you know, quinoa, and I'm like, what's this? So I got it. I actually got it, pretending that I normally eat that, because I was in. Honestly, Jake's laughing. He doesn't know this. So I got it as well.
Tyson probably got a burger.
Get it. Yeah. So I'm eating this, and I'm like, this is like eating rabbit food. This is what rabbits are like. And funny enough, I actually got a salad today from Save On Foods, and it reminded me of that trip. So I realized that I needed to get back to full fitness and get my body fat, because I was always skinny, But again, you can be skinny and still have like quite a bit of body fat, just your stature. And I knew that these are all healthy nutrients. It gives you energy. Your cells need all this stuff. And it's actually better for you. I'm thinking, oh, I'll get some pasta because there's a lot of carbs in it. But then I realized, hold on, if I eat this, what Jake has just got, and I felt the benefits, so I started to do that. And again, that season, I started to eat even more healthily. We had Richie Jones, remember? But Richie came back, he was injured. And Richie was always on juicing. He would juice beets, carrots, celery. He would juice anything, everything and anything.
Just to be really clear, juicing, not steroids, juicing juice.
Not steroids, juicing juice, juicing vegetables. So I started to do that as well. And again, that allowed me in the last 10 minutes to make that last minute run, up the pitch to get another chance. Because again, the more chances you get, the more goals you score. And if you're in the box more often, you're going to score more goals. It's different if you're a striker. You can sort of cheat a little bit and be up there. And again, that actually came down to it. So for me, getting back to my best, it was part to do with the eating and the hard work. We were putting in the hard work anyway. We're training full time with Edmonton. We're going to the U of A, the gym. And the last piece for me was that nutrition, because it recovered the muscles a lot quicker. You were able to go again. And it was down to Jake's salads and Richie Jones's juicing the vegetables and just drinking straight beet juice, straight carrot juice. It wasn't nice, but it was very beneficial. And again, that year I remember doing it, and it was awesome. And for me, I felt it was down to my best. It wasn't just my body, my mindset, I could see things quicker. I could see 3 players coming at me rather than being tunnel visioned. So my brain was a lot quicker just from eating healthier foods. And I've seen a huge, huge difference. And Jake could actually, you've been at a lot. And I remember the beep test, you destroyed us all in the beep test. I've always been good at beep tests. And there's not many people that get too far ahead of me in the beep test. But I remember Jake absolutely destroyed us. And that's whenever I'm like, okay, I have to find out what this guy's doing, because I knew Richie Jones was very fit as well. And again, whenever I seen him eating, I knew Richie already drunk a lot of the juices, and then I seen Jake taking that salad. I'm like, okay, maybe this can help. And I tried it out, and it was awesome. But again, we didn't get that food in Scotland, did we?
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of thing you bring up, because I mean, you say you learned a lot from me, but I also learned tons from you in terms of the things you're talking about: body shape, the way you open up your hips, finishing is just brilliant. I mean, everybody at Edmonton would marvel when you do a finishing step and you just open up, pass the ball the corner, Matt Van Olko be going the wrong way. So I mean, I definitely picked up things from you as well. But now when I'm reflecting back, you had so many last minute either equalizing goals or winners. I mean, we did as a team, but when I look at your personal season, like Carolina, you scored in the second half. Tampa, you scored last 20 minutes. Cosmos, you scored last minute. Ottawa, you tied it up in the last 20 minutes or so. Jacksonville, you got a winner late. And I mean, you're basically mentioning every goal you scored that year for the most part, and it's all coming in those last 10, 20 minutes. And I mean, I definitely think it comes down to the way you look after yourself, especially in North America when you're flying everywhere, from Edmonton to Puerto Rico, Edmonton to Miami, Edmonton to New York every week or every other week with away games. So, I mean, that's so important. But so reflecting back now, would you say 2016 was your best year as an overall player?
Yeah, for sure. The reason being is because after that season, I put a lot of work in, and I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to have a little bit of a rest. So me and the missus, we went to Mexico. I said, I'll start back training in January. And the NASL wasn't sure if they were going ahead or not. So, I had the contract on the table, then it wasn't on the table because everything was on hold. But again, I wasn't too worried because I knew I had a good year. Teams were interested in me. I said, you know what, I deserve this break. But what happened was I came back, started in January, started doing a little bit. and then NSL was back up, and I had an offer from Jacksonville. I had an offer from Indy 11. Colin Miller had an offer. Cincinnati came in right away. Like, this was all within 2 days. And then Matt Kearns, the agent, phoned me. He says, "Look, New York Cosmos want you." So I had 5 teams wanting me within 2 days, and I weighed everything up, and I seen Cincinnati were going to the MLS. And I'm like, oh, this could be my chance getting to the MLS. But then I had to be there in 2 weeks' time to start preseason. But I wasn't expecting to start back until February time in the NASL. And I was back earlier because the USL started earlier. So I was straight into preseason, and I neglected my off-season training program because I felt that I wanted to be rewarded for having a good year. And I neglected that, thinking, you know what, it's okay, I'll start in January. Whereas the previous year, I was in the gym with Matt Finokel on Christmas Eve, doing proper sessions, and then phoning the U of A, when you guys open again, I want back in. Whereas this time it was like, you know what, I'll go to Mexico, I'll chill out, you know, I deserve it, this type of mentality. I turned up to Cincinnati and straight into pre-season, in the hard work, beep test, running. We were training in this turf, went down to Florida for pre-season and injured my Achilles. And that was all down to my body wasn't conditioned. And the time that I was at Cincinnati trying to fight back to get fit again. And you know yourself, if you get a tendon injury, it can take months rather than a muscle injury. It'll take weeks. And I was fighting fit that whole year. And it was all down to neglecting my off-season training program. And then again, when you're injured, your headspace is not in the right place. You're not happy, things like that. And you know, Edmonton, you guys weren't doing too well, and Colin found out that I wasn't too happy down there, and he phoned me and said, "Would you want to come back?" I says, "Yeah, no problem. Let's come back," because I was just getting fit again, like getting proper fit, and that's whenever I came back to Edmonton and realized that things from the year before were a lot different, as you went through it, Jake. And I remember the first time I got there, first training session, and a lot of players I played with the year before. I think maybe 5 guys came over to me, welcomed me back. Remember Jake, Tyson, Albert, obviously. Tommy would have come over, and maybe Alan, Seaby, might have been more than that. But I remember a couple of other boys just didn't even say hello to me. And I'm like, what has happened to here? So I went straight into Colin. I says, Colin, what's happened to this place? Like, the changing room is dead. What's going on? And it just shows you, on a personal level and a team level, things can get bad so quickly in terms of performance levels. If you take your foot off the gas slightly, you can drop, because like that 2016, I was doing a lot of, I was trying to put everything together. How do I get to my peak? Started doing yoga again. You're talking about open the hips up for finishing. I wouldn't have been able to finish like that if I didn't do yoga, because yoga was able to open my hips up and free up the joints in my hips, which allowed me to have more flexibility, which means a greater space in my hips. So if I open my hips up, my back, I could see the goalie would move and I would put it the other side. It was a side foot into the other corner, or a lot of things like that. So I was going yoga. How do I recover quicker? Eating properly, ice baths, recovery pants, the skins, trying to put everything in together. So that actually takes a year maybe to put everything together along with your training, and then you get injured and then you have to get back to where it is. You know, so I guess it's like stocks. Stocks will go up, it'll go down a little bit. You get a little bit of injury or you get fatigued, and you have to recover, and then you go back up again, you go down, and then all of a sudden the stock can just do that. And in terms of individual and team performance in the camp, whenever I came back, the chemistry wasn't there, you know. And like the first thing I was like, obviously a lot went on. The captaincy was changed. obviously nothing to do with the captaincy, but if you take a captaincy off a player, maybe you don't have him fully there 100%. A little bit of scuffles at the end of last year, all the things that went on, but the respect levels weren't there between each other. And for me, that was the huge difference. The changing room was segregated. The coaching staff were segregated. It was like, pick a side. And know me, I'm a bonder type person. You know, I don't care what you look like, what religion you are. Like, we got to work together to make things work. I signed for Glentoran. I went from Glentoran to Linfield. Me personally, it didn't bother me, because I look at things that, hey, if you want to make things work, you work together. And the strongest people can work with people that they don't particularly like for the greater goal. And that was missing huge. That was missing massively. And then again, at the end of the year, the team ended up folding, but we were trying to get answers. What's going on here? So we can like assess our futures. And then there was a breakdown with ownership. There's a breakdown with the GM. And then for me, there was no respect levels whatsoever. So like, if I ever go into coaching or move on in the game, I'll take all those experiences and make sure that they're right. These are the fundamentals. These are the basics. These must be in place at all times. If they're not in place, then it's like a deck of cards. It can just collapse. And that's exactly what happened at Edmonton. And it wasn't nobody's fault. It wasn't one person's fault, you know. And it's always a number of things. And again, if to achieve good, you need all those connections, the chemistry clicking together. But as soon as they start disconnecting, they disconnect a lot quicker, because trust is a huge thing on the pitch and off the pitch. And once you lose each other's trust, you lose your respect. And then, because people look at the modern game, and you know, you might be on Twitter, you see coaches and they're putting up all this analysis stuff. I watched a video yesterday. It was Alex Ferguson. You might have seen it. Rio Ferdinand was talking about it, and he had the Chile miners that were caught in the cave. Yeah. He brought them in the day before a game. Basically said, these are the Chile miners. Like, this is what they had to do. They had to work as a team to survive in there for 40 days or so, whatever they were in. And the next day he turns up to the game and he says, look, guys, I done my team talk yesterday. And basically that was his team talk. It wasn't to do with tactics, formations. It was to do with Alex Ferguson knew you have to stick together and work as a team if you want to achieve. And again, that's the basics, you know, because you can have the best. Like, obviously you look at Man City and they have all the tactics, and whenever it's clicking, it's awesome. But whenever it's not clicking, you know, you see teams trying to play out from the back, thinking they have all this sussed out, and then you lose the ball and there's a goal. And it's like, well, what was lost there was a bit of communication. A lot of times it's to do with things. I was actually speaking to Albert last week. You know, now scouts and teams and coaches, they'll assess a player and they'll go, how many goals, how many assists, is he fast, you know, how's he cross the ball? But a lot of the part is that to win stuff, it's the stuff that you actually can't measure in players. It's very difficult to measure. And if you look over all the past successful teams, you look at Chelsea whenever Mourinho came in, they had John Terry, they had Carvalho, Lampard, Drogba. These weren't just good players. They were mentally tough and they understood the mental side of the game. Then you look at Man United whenever they had Roy Keane, you know, David Beckham, Ferdinand, Vidic, Jaap Stam. You look at Liverpool now, Jordan Henderson, you know, James Milner. You know, these guys are very underrated when it comes to the mental side, because they know. Like, you'll see a video clip of maybe, I think it was Jordan Henderson or James Milner before the game. He was the captain, and he's not saying about the tactics. He's saying, make sure you're on the front foot. Make sure we communicate. Make sure we stick together. This stuff that you can't measure in a player, that's hidden from all the analysis, that is the ingredients that actually takes you to winning something or takes you to the next level. And again, I've been very lucky to watch Manchester United as a kid because my dad supported them, and luckily to like from no age watching players coming through, Brian McClure, Eric Cantona, Steve Bruce, under Alex Ferguson, I was able to, I never missed a game, watch Alex Ferguson and the team for 20 odd years. And I realized that United they usually got teams in the second half because they sussed them out and they got out. Their first line of defense was attack. Obviously, they had fantastic players. But again, you know, a lot of the time it's not, obviously tactics and analysis plays a huge part. But nowadays in the modern game, there's a big part that's overlooked is the mental aspect of players. Because again, you can have the best player, you can have Messi, right? You put him in your team. But if Messi turns up and he doesn't want to work for the team and he can't be bothered that day, like even though he's the greatest player in the world and possibly the greatest player ever, you're not going to get much out of him. Obviously, he'll pick off a pass that'll split someone. But there's games I've watched Messi, especially against Liverpool. Remember Liverpool beat them 4-0? And Messi, greatest player in the world. A lot of Barcelona players were 3-0 up from the game before. They were walking about. And that was a motivational thing. And Liverpool they smelled blood and they went for it. So again, it was nothing to do with who's the better team, because the game before, Barcelona absolutely destroyed them. It was the mental side for that night. And that's the big thing that's overlooked in terms of recruitment of players.
Let's fast forward a little bit, just because I think it's been well covered, you know, in other areas as far as, you know, you had that 2018 was like your lost season for a lot of personal reasons and whatnot. But then I remember
sabbatical. We're going to call it a sabbatical.
And then, but I remember you were doing an interview over in Northern Ireland, and then heading into 2019, you were kind of in the off season. You were back in Northern Ireland now from Canada. You were training with some of the clubs there in Northern Ireland. Albert ended up signing. You know, he had been in Iceland, ended up signing with Balmina, I believe. But you were looking, and then you ended up ultimately with Sligo Rovers. Could you just kind of take us through that time, and why didn't you go back to Northern Ireland? What brought you to Sligo? Was it a chance to play League of Ireland, and for, you know, finally after all these years, you know, what led into that?
Yeah, well, at the end of the 2017 season, the team Edmonton folded. 3 days later, found out my wife was pregnant. So, and my wife just started a new job. So she switched jobs, and it worked out that for her to go off on maternity, she had to be working 5 months in her new job, right? So she had to work 5 months to get enough hours and qualification in Canada to go off on maternity and, you know, still get paid maternity pay from her work. So it worked out. It was November time. I'm like, okay, the Edmonton weren't going ahead. You know what? I'll just wait until May time. I booked in to start my UEFA coaching badges in Belfast. So I'm like, you know what? She'll go off maternity. Let's go home and play for a while. So I actually went 2018, went back, done my coaching badges. I was actually to fly over to Scotland, to Ross County, because they were very interested. Linfield were interested. Larne were interested, who's Albert's with now. And there was teams in Northern Ireland and Ross County as well. And the first week on the coaching course, I was to do 2 weeks there and then fly over as like a fitness type, make sure I was fit, hopefully get a contract, or sign for someone and then phone my wife, say, look, this is where we're going. I was going to fly back to Edmonton, pack everything up, and then fly to wherever I was signing for. The first week I was there, my wife phoned me and she says, I'm in the hospital. I've got a blood condition in the legs. I can't fly. So my wife wasn't, the doctor says you can't fly across the Atlantic. it's too dangerous, because if you swell up and you could take a blood clot or things like that. So it meant that we're stuck in Edmonton until the baby was born. Baby was due in August. So again, the season in the UK starts in August. So there were still teams. I was still speaking to teams saying, this is what it is. I'll continue to train. I'll be fit. I'll be ready to come in. But then I spoke with Edmonton. They were going to the CPL for 2019. And he says to me, look, there's a chance here you can coach the under 16s, you can play. I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I told all the other teams in Northern Ireland and Scotland, you know what, I'm just going to stay in Edmonton. I'll wait until the team starts training in February or March time and just go to the CPL. I'm in my coaching badges. It means I can do some coaching. And then all of a sudden, Edmonton changed their mind. For whatever reason, there's a lot of stuff that I can't really go into, but they changed their mind. And I'm like, okay, so I've just had a baby, stuck in Edmonton, haven't had a paycheck in over a year. My wife's wages are cut in half. What do I do now? So that's whenever I said to my wife, you know what? Like, this is crap, basically. Let's go. And we're going back home. So flew back home. Didn't know who was going to sign for her, but again, we flew back, ended up, we had to get the child's passport. We had to wait a couple of months to get that. Then we went back in November. The teams weren't really going to start signing until January because of their wage structure in Northern Ireland. And then I never even looked into Southern Ireland. And I was like, you know what, I'll come back. I'll go back to Canada. I'll sign for another team. We'll go back in February or March time. Speaking to a few Canadian teams that wanted me. Nothing concrete. And then I got a call. There was an agent, David Kennedy, from Northern Ireland. And he was like, you know what, I'll look at it. He's basically a recruitment. He's not really into soccer, but he started to give it a go. And then he phones me and says, what about Sligo? And Liam Buckley, who signed Jake for St. Pat's, he was there, and Dave Campbell. They knew me from the time I played for Glentoran against St. Pat's 10 years previously, or 8 years previous, whatever length of time it was. So they were aware of me. And he says, Sligo they want to see you, like drive down. We're playing Ballinamallard. So I'm like, oh, great. I don't have to drive to Sligo. Sligo's 3.5, 4 hours, whereas Ballinamallard's 2.5. But the game get called off with the snow. At that time, Dunfermline phoned me. Used to be the Carolina's assistant manager, Greg Shields. He phones me. He's the assistant manager at Dunfermline. He phones me and says, look, I seen you on LinkedIn. You're free and you're back in Belfast. I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you want to come over and sign till the end of the season? You know, we have January, February, March, April, a few seasons. And I'm like, yeah, well, let me call you in a couple of days. I'm meant to go to Sligo. We've got a game. So Sligo actually got a game against Athlone in Athlone. So I drove to Sligo 3.5 hours, jumped on the bus, another hour or two down to Athlone. They were playing a pre-season game. Played the game, didn't think anything of it. Get onto the bus. All the boys are like, oh, I want you to sign. Like, the manager's off the bus. Liam Buckley's off the bus on the phone. He's on the phone to your agent, cracking jokes. I'm like, yeah, sure. But I'm on my phone, like, about to phone Greg Shields to say, look, let's go over. Because I played all right. I didn't think I played well. I think I've done all right, but not as good as I can do. So I'm on the phone. I'm like, you know what? The boys will be tired. I'll phone Greg Shields while I'm on the bus and say, look, can I come over? He actually says, look, we just need a backup person that can score goals. He says, that's all we need right now. Come over. You'll come off the bench to try and win a game or something like that. That's all we need right now. So Liam Buckley finishes the phone. He's walking onto the bus, sitting there. My phone rings. It's my agent. He phones me, says, yes, he wants to get the deal done. I've just spoke to him. All the players are like, is that your agent? All the players started celebrating. I'd honestly never experienced that before. So right there and then, I'm like, this is a good thing. And obviously, playing for Linfield, being a Protestant, I was like, this is a good thing. And then I got a call. Daryl Fordyce, going down south. For me, it was always a little bit, a little bit weary type thing. How will I get treated? Obviously, like Dean Sheeds went to Derry and got a little bit of abuse. Derry's a little bit different than Sligo. So I drove back home. It was 12 o'clock at night or something. I got home, spoke to my wife the next day and says, look, Sligo want to offer me a contract for the year. I can take Sligo. I spoke to Greg Shields. He says, look, don't be signing, fly over. He says, just want to make sure you're fit. I says, look, I just played a game yesterday and they want to sign me, so I'm fit. So it was basically take a 4-month contract or take a 10-month contract to Sligo. Plus, if you're in Dunfermline, I couldn't go home to see family much. The whole point was newborn baby. I want my mum and dad. I want my wife's mum and dad to see the baby as much as possible before we actually moved back to Canada, because we knew we wanted to live there. So I signed for Sligo. I just says to Liam Buckley, look, I have a family. As long as you sort out accommodation and there's enough money there to see us through, no problem. And Liam, as Jake knows, he's an awesome guy. He looked after me. Actually lived around the corner from him, just outside Sligo. Went down and honestly, absolutely loved every minute of it. The people in Sligo are just, it brought me back to proper football. Going into the petrol station to fill up your gas, maybe in the morning of a game, and the fans are like, get stuck into them tonight, speaking to you, and just little things like that. And again, I was down. I didn't get a full pre-season under me, so it took me a while to get up to speed. I got up to speed, had a good game against Dundalk. We beat Dundalk at home. Scored a great goal against Shamrock Rovers. Started to get into the team. Then I got a little injury. Then I had to fight back again. But again, we had a good year. It was Liam's first year to get the base, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I felt I played a huge part in that in terms of players. Niall Morahan, the midfielder, he got player of the year. He's only 19. I worked a lot with him during training.
Yeah.
Just simple things like we're doing little possession drills. Get on the blind side of the player that's marking you. Don't be letting them be behind you. Just come here a couple of yards. Simple things, because he can take his game to another level, which he has done this year. But for me, it was awesome. It was freezing, mind you. Sligo was a cold place.
Yeah.
But for me, it made me fall in love with football again, because I missed 2018. Then I wasn't treated well in terms of promises made to me. And again, I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I want to play anymore. And going to Sligo, and the changing room was fantastic. The coaches were fantastic. And in Ireland, there's a famous quote, as Jake would know, it is what it is. And that's what it was. You knew what you got from everybody. And you knew where you stood. There was no backstabbing going on. It was just present yourself who you are, and we'll stick by you. And that's what it was. And, obviously Celtic were the dominant team, beating Rangers, and I'd come in the next day and all the boys are just torturing me. Lost a fortune betting the players €20. Oh, if you're betting him, you have to bet me. So losing a fortune, and whenever Celtic beat Rangers, and I would have made a fortune this year if I had still been there. But again,
was there any chance of going back to Northern Ireland, or was it just the 10-month contracts, like new opportunities?
Yeah, I spoke to Liam, and I says, look, the family, we want to go back to Canada. That's what we want to do. My priority is my family first and foremost. Football, I'll always give 110% wherever I am. And at the end of the year, I says, look, I want to try and get back to Canada. And I spoke to Valor, and then I spoke with Liam. I says, look, it's best for me and it's best for you that I obviously move on. I says, I've done quite well, but I think you can bring in a better player to take the team to another level. I know they brought in Will Seymour, and for me, I'm like, that's the type of player that they need to bring in. You know, Will's a little bit younger than me and a little bit more energy, and he'll take that team to a little bit further with Niall in the midfield as well. Dave Cawley's top quality centre midfield. What a midfield partner he was. You know, so bringing in Will, bringing in Niall, breaking through, becoming more experienced as a 20-year-old now, and then Dave getting back to full fitness. Those three in the middle. A couple of others are as well. But for me, I'm like, I actually said to Liam and he agreed with me. And I says, look, I'm going back to Canada as soon as I get an offer anyway. But I think it's a good thing for both of us. And like till this day, I haven't been so thankful as signing for Sligo in my life. Out of all my career, Sligo going there and realizing that, you know what, there's a lot to the game, and it was feeling loved again, feeling valued in the changing room, feeling respected, people picking you up when you were down, and you were picking people up when they were down, and that's what I grew up with. Whereas in North America, it seems a little bit different. It's like if two players are in the same position and there's a player not playing too well, he's sort of got a little bit of what's the German word? Schadenfreude. You know, he's sort of happy that he's doing bad. You know, in Ireland, we don't really have that, unless it's actually a rival. But if it's within the team, you know, it's like if me and Jake say fighting for one position and he's not doing too well, I'll still say, Jake, this is what you need to do a little bit better, you know, and help him instead of just letting him fade away slightly so I can pounce on him. And I think that's a huge difference between there and here. It's sort of, I guess it's more honesty, in my opinion. No politics. That would be the easy way to put it. No politics. But I love Sligo. I still speak to a lot of the players there, and the league is very honest. You know, and Sligo done fantastic this year. I know Will Seymour's went to Finn Harps, Ronan Coughlin's went to St. Pat's, who's Ronan's came on leaps and bounds. What a striker he's became. But they've got Romeo back, which is a huge plus, and I'm sure they'll bring in a couple of others. But I think Sligo will do pretty good this year.
Guarantee you they'll bring in a couple others.
Dave is working on it now.
He's working on it now.
Yeah. But it's an interesting point you bring up, Daryl, in the difference between North America and over in Ireland and in the UK, because I've noticed the same thing. Like, it seems to me like what you spoke about at the beginning of the podcast, and that you don't play the game for money. I mean, you need the money, but you play the game to win things. And I feel like the reverse, as a generality or general statement, whatever, the reverse would be true in America. You play the game for the financial side, you pay it for team of the week, you play it for like player of the month, you play it for all these individual things that are partially created by the American just society. And I think a lot of the Irish way would be, I play the game to win things. And that's why you have, if you're on the bench, you're still encouraging the guy in front of you, because you know he's playing. So if you want to win things, he's got to perform. So that's why I think the culture, from my experience in the two places anyway, I think that's why the culture is a bit different. But
100%. It's two different levels in terms of that type of culture. And that's, for me, obviously I'm with Valor and hoping to have a contract signed soon, but that's what I'm trying to bring in, because I felt that me and Albert brought that to Edmonton. After a couple of years, we obviously got rid of some players that would have been a cancer in the dressing room. But you mentioned the word culture. It's very easy, you know, to read a book and say, oh, we'll read a book on the New Zealand All Blacks or on Man United, and this is how you put a culture. It doesn't work like that. It works at the ground floor, in the changing room. And basically, it's, if you ever see two brothers, and I don't know if you have a brother. I don't have a brother. I've got sisters, but I had two cousins, and they were twins, and they would fight all the time, but they were best friends. Like, literally fight, punch each other and stuff, but they were best friends. And if if someone went against that brother, the other brother backed them up. And it was that sort of honesty culture type thing, where if you have players that are like brothers, you know, I could say, Jake, that was crap. You were terrible today. And you would not take offense to that. You would say, you know what, you're right. And then whenever I had a bad game, because again, people would call me and Albert the Belfast brothers. And after games, like in away trips or if we were at home, like I would say to Albert, you were crap today. Like you need to be better next week. And he would say the same to me. And then he would say, well, why was it crap? I'd say, well, what about that pass you gave Jake? You know, you put him in the crap and he got the blame for it. I says, that was your fault. Or you gave away the goal and cost us the game. And the two of us would bounce off each other because we were able to be that straightforward because we obviously grew up from the same area, but we knew where we grew up, it's like I could just say, Albert, you were crap today. And that was a compliment. That was a compliment in terms of, it wasn't a compliment and literally a compliment. It was a compliment to say, you know what, thanks for letting me know. What I'm telling him is get your act together. You need to improve. I'm helping him. And that's how, in Ireland, that's how it sort of is. It's like, you know where you stand with people. That's what it is. And there's no beating around the bush.
And moving forward without like, you know, nothing's official, so we don't want to, you know, want to hold off, but like just generally, what's the next steps now, or is the immediate plan, you know, in your mind, move ahead in Canada with the Canadian League, you know, and looking to win something in Canada? Is that the goal, or what do you do? Yeah,
well, obviously, like I came in pre-season this year. I came in fit, was feeling good, and then obviously COVID hit, and we're doing Zoom calls at home. Winnipeg, it was minus 20 degrees, so you couldn't get outside and do running. All the gyms are shut. So whenever you get to my age, you need to keep on top of things. If you don't keep on top of things, you lose your fitness a lot quicker than you were when you were 19, 20. So then when we eventually get back to training and we're like, right, we're going to PEI in 4 weeks' time, we're straight into this hardcore training on AstroTurf as well. You know, so I actually, again, I wasn't conditioned to what I was prior to COVID. And I got injured like 2 weeks before the tournament. So whenever we went to PEI, I would have been 70% tops fitness-wise. I played the first game against Cavalry, took off at half time, knowing I'm way off it here. And it was just down to, I got injured at the wrong time. I wasn't able to make up those weeks. And then I'm straight into a game. And as Jake knows, if you're straight into a game and you haven't got the base under you, it doesn't matter who you are, you will struggle. You're 2 yards off it. You can't make a recovery run because you've ran forward. You can't run forward because you've made a recovery run. You know, so that's what happened in that. And then obviously we were there for, I think, 6 weeks. Gradually got back up to speed a little bit. And it wasn't really until the last game against Forge when I felt, you know, maybe I've got 60 full minutes in me, which I says to the manager, I says, look, I've got 60 full minutes in me. And he actually played me as a false nine. We played a 3-4-3 and I played as a false nine and played well. But again, it was difficult this year on a personal note because what I shown at the Island games, sort of as they called it, was a fraction of what I can still give. So as soon as the Island games finished, we were home in September. I got the U of A, the gym workout. Me, Jake, and Tommy, we were on the same workout that they gave us.
Yeah.
Because we were
they broke it up by position. That's what they did. They had strikers do a workout, midfielders, and then defenders and keepers did different workouts.
Yeah. So they put me in with Jake, the Tommy, just to look after them. But no, September. I've been doing that since September. Right now, I'm doing it Monday to Friday. I finished this morning, and I spoke with Rob Gale. I says, look, you seen glimpse of me before COVID in training. I says, and I wasn't even fully fit because I hadn't had any games under me. I says, I don't play this game for money. I play it for the love, and I want to win a trophy before I have to retire. I says, but if I continue to put the training in, I think I can play until I'm 40, because I've never had pace. I've always been naturally fit, and as long as I keep my brain ticking over, and get my body shape, I think I can play for a little bit longer for sure. Again, I spoke to Rob and said, look, let's get something done. Like, I want to stay here. Family settled, child's at daycare, doing super. So I'm just waiting for that to come through, and I'm hoping for it to be done in the next few weeks. But in football, you never know what can happen. But the only goal I scored this year was against Edmonton, which was pretty good.
Yeah. They get what they get what they deserve on that one. What comes around goes around. But it's been great catching up. I've learned a lot about your career, and I think that I didn't even know before. And I think this is a great episode for a kid to listen to. Probably the best. If they want to learn about the games, they want to learn about the professional games, they want to learn about different cultures. So you've shared a lot of great stuff, and we can't wait to put this out. So thanks for sharing your time.
Before we jump off though, Daryl, we need a really good Jake story if you have it.
You always try to do this.
A really good what?
He already told the salad story. What else is there?
This guy
Jake story. I've a lot of good Tyson stories. I'm trying to think of Jake, because Jake was the most professional out of everybody.
Yeah, but he's a pain in the ass, so we need something. There's got to be something.
I know. I don't even know if I've seen him with a beer in his hand. Jake could inform me a little bit. Can you give me a little tip to get me going here?
I mean, well, Dave is the one who wants the story. I don't have anything for you. I would say any Gustavo story would be good.
Oh, the Gustavo story. Oh my God, I'll actually tell a Gustavo story. We're down in Oklahoma. We're losing 1-0. Rio OKC. We're losing 1-0.
That is good.
Gustavo comes off the bench. I get substituted off, so I'm sitting on the bench, and Colin Miller gives Gustavo a couple of instructions. Does a couple of things that he didn't want him to do. There's about 5 minutes left of the game. We're losing 1-0. Colin Miller turns around to the bench and goes, "Remind me not to sign another player that can't speak English." Right? So we're like, oh, whatever. 5 minutes later, Gustavo's about 30 yards from goal, pulls it onto his left foot. Never seen him kick a ball with his left foot in my life. He always used the outside of his right foot. Pulls it onto his left foot, hits it from 30 yards off the bar and in. One of the best goals I've ever seen. Runs away, starts doing all these flips and back flips. And we're like, well, I remember saying to Colin, you may get a few boys, a few of the South American boys, if they can do that. He's like, no, I can't sign another boy. I can't speak English because I can't take instructions. 2 weeks later, we signed Nico DiBiase from Argentina. Literally couldn't even say yes or no. Brings him in, hardly plays him because he can't speak English.
And in fairness to Gustavo, he could speak English. It was just you could understand him perfectly fine. It was just broken English. But Gustavo was a character. I remember he would, if he's listening to this podcast, he'd hate this story. But he would he'd go into the shower. He'd train in his boxers or whatever, his briefs, and he would have, I think he had 2 or 3 pairs with him in Edmonton. That's it. So he would train in a pair of boxers. He'd go into the shower. He'd wash his boxers in the shower. Then he'd put on a fresh pair, his second pair after training, and he'd leave the boxers hanging up so he could wear them for training the next day. The man literally had like 3 pairs. He had like 4 shirts, 3 boxers. He came with a backpack to Edmonton from Brazil. It was wild. He was a character.
What a guy though. What a guy.
What a guy. He's an example of a guy that didn't play a lot for us, but I actually think had a big influence on our success because of the lightheartedness he'd bring to the dressing room. Like, everybody liked him, always joking around. And he was there in 2016, and then they let him go for 2017.
Yeah.
But it's so important, the off the field, the locker room, the dressing room type things that you don't know, that you can't measure, like you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. The thing with Gustavo, I used to say to him, look, you're Brazilian, you're supposed to have 20 tricks. He says, no, one trick. And he had the chop, the fake chop. It was the best chop I've ever seen. I'm telling you, like, Suarez is probably closest to it in terms of the chop, JJ Okocha. But Gustavo, when he done that chop, it was the best. I remember he done it in Scotland, got the penalty.
Yeah.
I said, give me that ball, I'm taking the penalty. I says, Gustavo, just get in the box and do the chop. You'll get us a penalty every time. But he was a fantastic guy. And, again, Brazilians, Argentinians, South Americans, they play it for the love. They don't do it for the money. And you see their passion. I guess the Spanish and the Germans are like that as well. You see Juan Mata at Man United. He doesn't play and the team wins. He's on the pitch celebrating with the players. So it's that culture of South America, I guess. But Gustavo, he's absolutely heart of gold. Great guy. We only played with him for a year, I think.
Yeah.
But what a guy. And I know Jake became really close with him. I still speak with Gustavo till this day. His son is called Luca, same as my son, spelt differently, born around the same age. But yeah, he's a tremendous guy. And there's players you'll play with that you keep in contact, and there's players that you'll not see, you'll not even hear about for the rest of your career. Gustavo would be one of them. Jake's another from that team. The year before, there would have been Lance Lang, Eddie Edward, Tommy, Frank, players like that you just get connections with. But from that 2016 team, we had a lot of connections, a lot of chemistry, and I guess a lot of boys still speak with each other quite a lot. But that's what we had in that team. There might have been one or two players that you didn't like so much. Not going to name names, but we made it straight to them that as long as you put a shift in on the pitch, then everything will be fine. But yeah, there's not too many stories about Jake because everything's just so professional.
He keeps it well.
Yeah. No one ever knows. The quiet ones. What is the quiet ones are the most dangerous? Isn't that the saying? You got to watch out for them.
Well, everyone that is listening, make sure to follow Daryl on Instagram and Twitter. You're pretty active on social media. Not hard to find you too, right? Just put in Daryl Fordyce.
I'm not too much active on it, I wouldn't say. Once you have a kid, like if there's a funny video of the kid, I'll throw it up on the Insta story, but not too much now. Every time I went on it over the past couple of years, everything was to do with the politics in America. And it was just all propaganda being spewed out all over it, and I'm like, you know what, I can't be bothered with this. But I guess you guys you'll get a little bit better next year. Heal, as the word is down there now. I went through it in Northern Ireland with the politics side, and again, it doesn't work unless two sides respect each other and work together. That's how it is, because people have their views. Some people have stronger views, and they always talk about the left and the right and this bar. Where are you on it? And this doesn't matter where you are on it. If you're not willing to work with someone, then you're a cancer, so to speak. If you're not willing to work with somebody, whether they share the same views with you or not, then what is the point? You're just going to be stuck in your old ways.
Jake and I were talking. We think we're just going to move out to Winnipeg and hang out with you. A little more peaceful up there.
Very peaceful. I actually live in an area here that's very Asian dominant. In the way the Asians live, very peaceful, and you see them out doing their stretches and stuff, going for jogs, and very peaceful people. And that's where we actually live in Winnipeg, away from Tyson, which is a good thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Stay away from that, man.
No, but it's all good here, and you know, I want to wish Jake good luck for this year coming up. I was trying to get him up to Canada, but he wasn't having it.
Well, you never know. As of this recording, nothing has been announced, Daryl. So
Yeah.
Asia, we discussed that. Bangladesh Police was the winner in our poll we had on Twitter.
Sligo Rovers, not back Buckley.
Well, you never know. You never know.
Sligo need another striker.
Sligo do need another striker. We're actively working on that. And Valor, if there's an opening, might be a contender, although we'll see when the announcements come out.
The thing with Jake is, you know, obviously at Edmonton, he played midfield a lot of the time, but like we used to say, I remember me and Albert saying to Colin, like, just throw Jake up front beside Tommy. And he was like, no, we need 3 men in the middle of the park, because the assistant manager at the time was very evident. And we were like, just one of the strikers can drop in as a 10 and just do a job in the midfielder. And I can sit beside either Nick or Shamit, or them two sit with whoever it is, because he'll always get you goals. And I seen his highlight video, and like, I honestly didn't realize the quality of goals that you actually did score. You have scored in your career. And I seen it in training. It didn't matter. You score goals for fun in training when you played up front, because whenever we had a squad game, Jake was up front because there was only 2 strikers, so to speak, Tommy and Jake at the time, and then I would have been sort of a backup because I was playing midfield. But then whenever Jake's starting, he's in the squad game, if he's in the starting 11, he's on the left. But then whenever he's not in the starting 11, he was up front and he had score all the time. And like, obviously it's a lot different, and managers have their different viewpoints and how they see the game and how they want to play the game. But without doubt, no matter where you go, Jake, you'll score goals because you just have that striker's instinct. And people talk about the striker's instinct. What is it? Being in the right place at the right time, all this stuff. But again, it's being on your toes. You were always on your toes. You're always moving in and around the box. You're never standing still. And when someone's on your toes, you're on the front foot. As soon as that ball drops or there's an opening, you're on your toes, you're ready for it. It's like getting ready to sprint. If someone's standing still and someone's jogging slightly behind them, and then they go at the same time, the guy that's slightly jogging, he's going to go ahead first because he's not in a static position. And that's what you have. It's, again, we used to say you're Jamie Vardy, and that's how Jamie Vardy is, Leicester. You watch him playing, he's always on his toes, he's always on the shoulder. And again, as you get a little bit older, you might have to drop into, you know, a deeper type role, like a number 10, or coming off the bench to try and get a winner, stuff like that. Even on the left, on the right, but very versatile. And the one thing I will say is the next, how old are you now, Jake? 29?
Yeah, 25.
Yeah.
But, I turned 30. I'm
just turned 30.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But what you will find now, and I found it, is you will start seeing the game a lot quicker and seeing moves before they even happen. And then again, you watch Jamie Vardy now for Leicester. You think, oh, he's not doing much, and then bang, there's a goal. Like, he hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what type of you are. You'll sense it, where you'll realize that, okay, I'm not as quick as I used to be. I need to be in this position. I need to be in a better position to make up for that loss. And that's what you will do. And you'll figure that out playing yourself. Yeah. And it just comes naturally. People talk about experience and what is experience. But, you know, a 22-year-old can have experience if he understands that a lot earlier. But again, I think it's all to do with your thinking. When you're younger, you don't have to. When you get a little bit older, it's like, okay, I have to. And then you actually put your mind to it. And that's what you'll find in the next few years, because that's what I've found over the past few years.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you flattering me on my own podcast. It means a lot. It means a lot coming from a guy like you, for sure. Edmonton's all-time leading goal scorer. I'm sure you have close to 100 goals in your career over the years. But it means a lot. I think one of the great part about this game is the people you meet along the way, kind of like what we discussed a little bit with the Gustavo, and to have you as a resource of mine and you and vice versa is great, because I know even if we haven't talked for a year, we don't go that long, but maybe 6 months, I know I can be like, hey, what do you think of this game or this play or whatever. I remember I missed a sitter against Edmonton or for Edmonton when when you were signed with Cincinnati, and you texted me right away. You were like, it was harder than it looked. The ball bobbled up on you or whatever you said. So it's great having you as a resource, and it was great having you on the podcast. So thanks for all your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Daryl.
Hopefully it helps everyone.
Oh, definitely.
After you guys.
Yeah, they'll learn a thing or two.
Episode for sure.
Yeah.
Get it promoted, Daryl. Social media.
Sounds good.
Sounds
good.
Thanks, Daryl. Until next time,
Yeah.
Dave. I'm the athlete.
I'm the advocate.
And we are the Aristocrats.